Episode 2 of HBO's Hard Knocks took us in depth into the running back battle between Velus Jones and undrafted rookie Ian Wheeler. Plus, it brought us the softer side of DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, whose kids definitely stole the show.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. That way you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus every day. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. On the show today, we recap everything we saw and learned from episode 2 of the Chicago Bears training camp on HBO's Hard Knocks. We'll start with the big 3 wide receivers, where we got to see a bunch of great practice footage of them running routes against Bears defensive backs and making catches in the back of the end zone for some touchdowns, some in-game stuff from them, but also behind the scenes and definitely the lighter, softer side of Keenan Allen and DJ Moore as dads interacting with their children was really a joy to see on Hard Knocks. Then we'll turn our attention to the running back room, where we got a lot of Velus Jones mic'd up, and we got to know undrafted rookie running back Ian Wheeler, who is going to medical school when he finishes his career, deferred medical school, but wants to eventually become a medical doctor. It was cool to kind of get to know his story a little bit more. And then we'll wrap up with a few nuggets on Caleb Williams that came out of this episode. Nothing, earth-shattering, but 3 separate interesting little tidbits we got from him along the way that adds really to the legend and our understanding of what Caleb Williams is doing as a rookie quarterback. But I want to start with the wide receivers, because that to me felt like the big storyline we got to focus in a lot on in this episode. It was Keenan Allen versus Jalen Johnson at practice. We finally got a lot more Jalen Johnson mic'd up and got to hear some of his trash talking, making plays in there, and Allen admitting, hey, I haven't really been able to get a catch on him in practice, but I'm going to. And, really kind of challenging him and them going back and forth. We saw Rome Odunze making some nice plays in those practices as well, and it felt like you really got to see more of the practice nuts and bolts of route running and the hand fighting between receivers and defensive backs, and really that true training camp battling of, we heard all offseason about iron sharpens iron. I mean, it's the cliche we've heard over and over and over again about, great wide receivers going up against great defensive backs. And we finally really got into the weeds on all right, here's Keenan Allen versus Jalen Johnson, and how Jalen Johnson's right there to break up passes and how he hangs on with guys. And then even in the Bills preseason game as well, we got some good Jalen Johnson moments in there too. And DJ Moore as well on the big catch from Caleb Williams on the curl route that we all saw. It was a really nice way to get us closer to not only the newest Bear receiver in Keenan Allen, but also someone who just got a big contract in DJ Moore. And really, I think, this was kind of what they teased, in the trailer for the episode. So if you don't have HBO Max or couldn't watch it on TV, you can get a sense of how this looked. The NFL tweeted it out. I think the Bears tweeted it out as well. It was a cool section of the episode that they put out on social media for free, where you can just kind of see a lot of those battles back and forth. But even beyond what we got on the field, we also really got to get under the helmet a little bit with these guys and see a lot more personality from Keenan Allen and DJ Moore in particular than what we typically get from them, on the outside. And to me, this is what Hard Knocks is all about, because we see the jersey number 2 and number 13, and we see the plays they make, and maybe they'll get up and point for a first down. But even at press conferences when the helmets and stuff are off, DJ Moore tends to be a little bit more calm and quiet, and maybe a coy smile on his face, and he'll occasionally say something interesting. But Keenan Allen, very much business. He's the veteran talking about making plays, and it's all very sort of standard by the book you don't really get a lot more about these guys. But Hard Knocks was able to mic them up, get a lot of footage of them with their children and their significant others, and you really saw this warmth and this character in each of them that, yeah, sure, we all sort of assumed. I mean, they're good people and all that stuff, but like you got to see Keenan Allen playing with his kids after practice, and his daughter's like drying off his face and his head from the sweat with like a little towel that she had found, and he was playing catch with another one of his kids, and he was making these nice little one-handed catches sitting down, and then at one point she throws it and hits him like when he's not looking, hits him like right in the stomach, and he's like, oh, you're lucky Daddy's been working on his abs or whatever. Like it's just these sort of like cute, soft moments where it's like, oh, like Keenan Allen's a dad, just like anyone else. Like they're football players, but they're human beings with families that they love too. And then with DJ Moore, we got to follow him and his kids and his. I don't know if they're married or what the relationship is. His significant other. They went to the Museum of Ice Cream in Chicago, and you got to sort of see him playing with his kids in there. They buried him. There's a giant like pool of plastic sprinkles that they were all playing in. The kids all buried DJ Moore in that, and a very cute moment there. They tried hot dog flavored ice cream on a bun with relish and mustard at the ice cream museum. Just the kind of oddities you love to see in Hard Knocks. And then they follow that into the Bills game, and you got DJ Moore's kids talking to him on the sideline during warmups and coming over and, seeing the daddies out there and, rooting for him in the stands and stuff. Like, it was just so cool to be able to get that next level deeper, especially as his daughter is cheering, go Bears and booing the Bills and telling a Bills fan that she doesn't want a Bills jersey. She's Bears all the way. Like, it's that kind of cute behind-the-scenes stuff that we just don't really get. And then we also got a sit-down with Rome Odunze. We got to see Odunze do karaoke, just like they're making all the rookies get up in front of the room at a meeting and do karaoke, sang a Chris Brown song. But we also got to see like a really cool sort of character-building moment for Rome where a couple of ninth grade football players were at practice, and he was talking to them and just like giving them advice about how, it's all about preparation and hard work, and about how like you got to run the route 1,000 times so that nothing that you're doing in the game is ever new. You practice that catch 1,000 times, you practice that route 1,000 times, and then everything will come super easy to you once you actually have to do it on the field. And like, it wasn't just like platitudes and cliches of like work harder and you can do whatever you want in the world, but it was like kind of legit, like, no, like this is exactly how and why you do it, and this is what I've done, and you guys are young and can still work at all this stuff, and then if you do it this way and really put that kind of effort in the preparation, like this is the work that it's all about, and you're going to outwork the guy across from you. Like it was very real from Rome Odunze, and we still got to hear from his mother was mic'd up during the Bills game as well, so we got to we got some of the behind the scenes stuff and the personality stuff from Rome as well. So like I'm just glad that after the first episode, it was a lot of Caleb Williams, a lot of Matt Eberflus. They're obviously the biggest characters here, but we wanted to hear more from the Bears receivers as kind of the other big offensive stars and some of the other biggest stars on this team. And it was nice that a couple of guys that are a little bit more stoic most of the time in Allen and Moore opened up a little bit, whether they knew the cameras were, certainly Moore knew the cameras were there at the ice cream museum, but I think they kind of knew what was going on and were still able to, not be so buttoned up and kind of let loose a little bit and say, hey, what? It's cool and it's all right to show exactly what you're like as a person off the field, and it brings us as fans closer to them as people and as players for us to root for. I'm also glad that we finally got to get to know running backs coach Chad Morton, and not as much focused on, we really didn't get much DeAndre Swift or Roshan Johnson or Khalil Herbert, but we got all in on Velus Jones and his transition to running back, plus the undrafted rookie Ian Wheeler, who had a couple of touchdowns in the Bills preseason game. And I think it was pretty revealing about Velus Jones, and also a really cool story with Ian Wheeler, and finally the personality of Chad Morton we've been waiting for. So lots to get into with the running backs next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. We might be in the slow part of the sports calendar, although now the preseason football is starting back up, we're really starting to ramp up now, but no matter what's going on your sports day, you can be sure there is plenty for you to play with our friends at FanDuel. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Whether you're betting on baseball, whether you're betting on the Bears preseason games, you get money lines and spreads for that. You can bet ahead to Week 1 Bears-Titans, where Bears are still favored about 4.5 points in that one. You can bet on Matt Eberflus as Coach of the Year candidate, Caleb Williams as an offensive rookie of the year candidate, and so much more, all in their app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of the rest of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. The wide receivers was what we really wanted to see from, the bigger stars getting mic'd up. But on this podcast, when we previewed Hard Knocks and said, what do we want to see across this season? One of the names we were still waiting to hear from was running backs coach Chad Morton, because we had heard from the players and certainly heard at training camp practices. He's a talker. He is a trash talker. He likes to get in guys' face. He likes to, but he's also like your friend and a good coach too. Like he's not just a loudmouth, but actually someone who's helping these players get better and pushing them in a lot of ways. And so I was glad to see we finally get introduced to him. But it's not all about the coach in Hard Knocks. They always try and make it about the players. And so it was in the context of undrafted rookie Ian Wheeler trying to make the team as the sort of the young running back in the room, and in the context of Velus Jones transitioning to running back. And it was really a bigger focus on those two. Didn't get much Travis Homer in that conversation, which I found interesting. But, I think Jones and Wheeler are a little bit more of the interesting storylines at this point. At one point, the running backs coach Chad Morton told Ian Wheeler that he looked like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. He said somebody was like frowning, or he looked mopey. He's like, hey, you got to brighten up a little bit. You look like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Like just giving him a hard time about, harmless stuff, but then also like getting in his face about, hey, lower pads, run harder, like run through them. Don't be afraid. Don't be soft. Like just go hit him. Go be physical. And, and then encouraging him along the way as he did more and more of that. And then the episode kind of builds up to Ian Wheeler taking that coaching and that confidence into the Bills game and having a couple touchdowns and running really hard. And of course, he also had a bunch of great runs at practice that they were able to capture well. That speed really showed up for him there. And it was like, wow, this is a cool story of a player who's ascending, but also they interviewed him and it's like, yeah, Ian Wheeler deferred acceptance into medical school, got into medical school, but really wants to pursue his NFL career first, see this out as far as it can go, and then he'd like to go become a medical doctor. He said he wants to be a psychiatrist in particular, but still, I thought it was cool to kind of see that coach-player relationship and also get to know an undrafted free agent running back that prior to the Bills game, hadn't been in the spotlight much at all, a player kind of buried on a depth chart, but making a little bit more of a name for himself, and certainly is playing his way under the practice squad at the very least this season, and putting some good tape out there for the rest of the NFL. But I think the guy with a better shot at the roster, obviously, then is Velus Jones, and we got some of Chad Morton coaching Velus Jones as well, but we also got him mic'd up in the Bills game, which had a lot of interesting stuff, and on the sideline quite a bit at practice. And so, when they were talking in the coach's room about Velus Jones going to running back, he said something along the lines of, Velus, he's got to be in the playbook. He's really got to keep his head in the playbook so we can do more than just, the outside runs. Because I think it's pretty clear, like the touchdown he had against the Bills, right? You give him a toss to the outside. There's not a lot of you're not reading gaps per se. You're not necessarily reading the run fit of there's reads in the open field, but it's not like you're reading an offensive line at that point. When you're tossed out into the flat, right, there's a couple blockers out in front of you. You're reading them. It's one or two guys and one or two defenders, but it's just open space, kind of like a kickoff return or a punt return at that point. Whereas when you're handing it off up the middle, maybe you're reading three different gaps and two different linebackers to see which gaps those linebackers fill and then make your cuts off of that and how your blocks are holding up. There's a lot more he needs to be aware of running on the inside there. And the running backs coach, Chad Morton, made that very clear on the front end. His head has got to be in the playbook. And I was, I don't know if bothered's the right word, but it struck me a little bit right away right after they introduced Velus Jones as transitioning to running back, they had him mic'd up on the sideline at practice and he said, yeah, I'm with the running backs like I'm Percy Harvin. And I don't know, that just struck me as a little bit getting ahead of yourself. I don't know. I'm trying not to be too hard on him because I think everybody's really hard on Velus Jones, and I'm not trying to say this makes him an idiot or this, this means he's a loser. Or what I mean, but it just kind of feels like, hey man, you weren't great at wide receiver, and now you're trying it out at running back. And I think the thing about Percy Harvin was that he was a pretty darn effective receiver and a pretty darn effective return man, and then occasionally got some handoffs as well. But Percy Harvin, we don't need to spend a lot of time on Percy Harvin, but you look back at his career, obviously it was cut short with injuries and the migraine stuff, but offensive rookie of the year with the Vikings in 2009. Obviously, like a first-round pick, a guy who had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage in his third season, had over 1,000 kick return yards as a rookie, had 5 kickoff return touchdowns across his career, and had multiple seasons of 600 plus yards receiving, and then a couple of seasons of over 100 yards rushing, including that 2011 season. He had 345 rushing yards and a couple of rushing touchdowns. And so, like, not that Velus Jones was necessarily saying I'm as good as Percy Harvin. I mean, I get he's wearing number 12. He's a return man, wide receiver, playing some running back. Like, I get why there's some loose connections there, but like I also feel like Velus Jones needs to start by like making the team and providing real value to this roster before you can start comparing yourself in any way to Percy Harvin. I mean, like Velus Jones in his career has 127 receiving yards and 154 rushing yards, and notably no kick return touchdowns. Has a couple long returns, but no touchdowns there. Like, you're quite a bit of ways away from Percy Harvin. Maybe you think you're as fast or as skilled as Percy Harvin, but like you got to be able to do it. And so, like, again, I'm not here to like rip him a new one and call him a bum or whatever. But like maybe don't jump all the way to Percy Harvin. Like, can we step back a little bit to like Ty Montgomery from the Green Bay Packers, wide receiver to running back transition? Like, I don't know, just like, you don't got to pretend you're Percy Harvin the first time you're playing running back. Because like, even he himself then, during the Bills game, they had him mic'd up when he took one of the handoffs. And I think it was actually right after his touchdown, at least when Hard Knocks showed it. We don't know exactly if that was the order it happened in or if that's just how they presented it to us. But he was mic'd up in the Bills game and said, I don't even know what I'm looking at yet. Give me some time and I'm going to be great. Like, just like basically just saying, I scored a touchdown, but just wait until I actually know what I'm looking at yet. He's like, I don't know what I'm looking at yet. Like, give me some time. I'm going to be great. Like, you're admitting, like, yeah, you're learning a brand new position after 3 days and you still don't even know really what you're looking at yet. So, like, maybe don't compare yourself to Percy Harvin the first time you get put at the running back spot. I mean, I don't know. Especially because in that Bills game, again, talking about Percy Harvin, maybe he thinks he's as good a returner as Percy Harvin, but he muffs that kickoff. And they had him mic'd up on that muffed kickoff. And you can't make out exactly what he yells, but like he runs over that kickoff and yells something at Tyler Scott that I attribute to being something along the lines of either like calling it, saying, hey, like, get out of the way, Scott, I got it, or just saying, hey, I got it, even though it was a lot closer to Tyler Scott. And then after calling that he got it, goes right through his hands, hits the ground, has to pick it up. And like, you can't be the guy who's like, I got it, and then you literally don't got it. And you can't be the guy who says, I'm like Percy Harvin, and then you're like, but I still don't know what I'm looking at. Like, something about that just rubs me a little bit the wrong way, and I thought it didn't end up turning out like a great look for Velus Jones, but they did make him definitely a sympathetic character and someone that we're all rooting for. Like, it's in the best interest of the Bears, and like Velus seems like a good person. Like, we all want Velus Jones to be successful, and certainly the running back experiment is something that we're happy to see and hope he can have some success with. But like let's do the results first, and then maybe some of the talking and the other stuff a little bit later on after that. It was nice that episode 2 wasn't quite so Caleb Williams focused from start to finish. A lot of Caleb Williams, as there should be, but like we got to go into some of these other storylines with a lot more depth, and then we just kind of kept checking in on Caleb Williams, and that came away with, I thought there were 3 particular nuggets, two stronger than the third, but like 3 things that I thought was interesting that we gained from Caleb Williams that I want to go through, including potentially an Olympic future, some stuff with the referees, and maybe a little trickeration from Caleb Williams next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp provides online therapy that's here to help you be your best self. We all live busy lives with packed schedules, whether you got kids' activities or just, big projects at work or whatever it is in your life. It's easy to let your priorities slip and run out of time to take care of yourself. So it's important to have non-negotiables like therapy that really carve out that time so you can be the best version of you, both for yourself and also for all those other things on your schedule and all the people in your life that count on you. I do online therapy every single week, and it's a really important part of my own personal mental health regimen, and that's why I highly recommend giving BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire, and then they match you with a licensed therapist. And if that therapist is not the right one for you, that's fine. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. We did get some good Caleb Williams stuff, which is a prerequisite for every Hard Knocks episode. We all, at the end of the day, Caleb is who we're all tuning in to see first and foremost, and we all want to watch his progress, his development, his growth, and maybe be able to reflect on these early days later on in his career, whatever he goes on to be able to do as a Chicago Bears quarterback. And so we didn't get as much of the ebbs and flows of the Caleb Williams development stuff that we got in the first Hard Knocks episode. But I thought there were three interesting things that jumped out at me in particular. I mean, obviously there was more than just three things of Caleb Williams, but three that I was like, oh, I always take notes during these episodes and things that jumped out at me where it's like, I gotta write that down and remember to talk about that on the podcast, but also keep that in the back of your mind for the future. I think the first one we saw was that they brought Caleb Williams into the meeting room. I think it was Eberflus, Caleb Williams, and then one of the Bears front office guys. I don't know if it wasn't the director of analytics, but it was director of football administration. One of the front office guys whose names, even if I had it in front of me, we wouldn't know it. I'm guessing it was football administration, Matt Feinstein, but I didn't write it down or screenshot or whatever when the episode came out. But they sat down, they had a meeting with Caleb Williams, especially for him, going through who the refereeing crew, the officials, were going to be for Bears Bills, and saying, these are the 8 guys. This is the white hat is the head official for the game. This is his name. They said, his full-time job, he's I think an athletic director at a high school in Washington. I don't remember exactly where they said, but they were having Caleb, they're kind of prepping Caleb on who the head referee was going to be in this game, and was hey, you need to get in good with these guys. These referees have really long careers, and you're going to have a really long career. So you're going to see these referees multiple times. Sometimes not even multiple times in the same season, but over the course of your career, you're going to see the same guys every year. And if you have a long career, you're going to see them 10, 15 times, whatever. So they were Caleb, get in good with these guys now. They were coaching him on how to have a relationship with the referees. And I thought that's such a good idea, and also one of those behind the scenes moments that we would never see or even think of otherwise. They didn't end up showing Caleb actually talking to the referees in the game, which was interesting. There was a nice moment with Josh Allen after the game. That probably would have been the fourth nugget if I was going to include one on here, where when Caleb took a hit on his first play, Josh Allen was like, dude, don't do that in the preseason. In the regular season, that's fine, but in the preseason, don't take that hit, dude. And he was like, all right, you're just in passing, and that was cool. But we never got the follow-up of Caleb talking to the referee and using that skill. But I thought it was really cool and showed the Bears proactive, smart thinking of hey, yeah, for every game, go get to know that referee, because he's going to, that referee, they didn't say this, but it's implied, that referee is going to control whether you get that roughing the passer penalty, whether they throw that intentional grounding flag or not. You know what I mean? If you can at least have a positive relationship in their mind, maybe they'll give you the benefit of the doubt more often than not. Whereas if you're someone who's constantly arguing with the referee and getting in his face and not friendly with him at all and disagreeing with him over and over again or whatever it is, they might be more inclined to say, "Oh, screw you." I'm not gonna give you a close call that goes your way. Any little advantage you can find, even if it's just with the referees a little bit, is a really smart and cool thing that the Bears had Caleb Williams do there. Another really interesting thing that they just gave a brief clip of Caleb in the quarterback room as they were kind of just, messing around, way before the meeting or after the meeting, just kind of talking and socializing. They talked about how flag football is coming to the Olympics in 2028, and Caleb was like, I would 100% do flag football at the Olympics. He was adamant, he would love to participate in flag football in the Olympics. We're 4 years away from that, but that's legit something that's on the radar here. And I haven't really been keeping up with this, but I did a little digging before the podcast, and this is a big thing around the NFL right now too. So if you don't know, they're going to try out flag football in 2028 at the Olympics in Los Angeles. They don't know exactly what the venue is going to be yet, but it's my understanding that flag football at the Olympics is a 50-yard field, not a 100-yard field, and it's only 25 yards wide. So it's about half as long and half as wide as an NFL football field. And I believe it's 5-on-5 in the Olympic format. So I'm assuming that's quarterback and 4 receivers versus 5 defensive players. And certainly it would be really cool to see Caleb Williams in the Olympics representing USA, on the international stage. But we've also seen, and this was what I was kind of catching up on, Patrick Mahomes has said he wants to do the flag football in the Olympics. Travis Kelce has said he wants to get a gold medal and be a part of the Olympics team. Like, we may have a real discussion in 4 years about which of the NFL's best players may try and go to the Olympics. Now, I would guess that under their contracts, teams won't want these players playing in the Olympics. Even though it's flag football, there's not nearly as much of an injury risk. There's still some injury risk anytime a quarterback is throwing or running around, or an NFL player is running around on the field. Like, I'm guessing it's going to kind of be like 3-on-3 basketball in the Olympics this year, where there weren't really NBA players. It's all the guys who aren't good enough to get in the NBA. So in this case, all the guys who aren't good enough to get in the NFL would play in the flag football league. And the part of the reason why in the Olympics this year there weren't any NBA players in the 3-on-3 league is because you have to qualify for the 3-on-3 league. Like, you have to play in games to earn your way onto the Olympic team for that. And I would guess flag football might be similar, where it's like, obviously, Patrick Mahomes, even 4 years from now, would be the best player in flag football in the world, and the U.S. team would love to have him on there. But I'm guessing if you want to play for Team USA flag football, you're going to have to play in qualifying games and matches for Team USA flag football, and that Patrick Mahomes ain't playing in no qualifying matches. I mean, it'd be hard enough for him to even get permission to play in the Olympics, let alone trying to do qualifying matches before to get in the Olympics. So I predict it's not going to end up being a big NFL crossover, but Roger Goodell's kind of left the door open there, so we'll see what that ends up being. But, like, if Caleb Williams was in the Olympics, that'd be pretty cool. And, like, 4 years from now, he's still going to be on his rookie contract with the Bears. He's not going to be super high paid just yet. Like, I would absolutely love to see him out there having fun. And clearly, like, from this episode of Hard Knocks, it's something he is 100%, his words, 100% would want to do flag football at the Olympics. The last thing, briefly here before we wrap up, there was a play at practice that they showed where I think they were just practicing, like, play action handoff kind of. It was like snap, turn, ball fake, and then turn and, like, roll out. But they weren't doing, like, real throws to receivers after that. It was just like the ball stuff and the footwork, right? Just sort of everything before the throw on a rollout, a PA rollout. And Caleb threw it back to his coach. It's not like a step drop back throw. He's just tossing the ball back to his coach. Threw it behind his back, like we've seen Patrick Mahomes do. Dead accurate to the assistant coach. Behind the back pass from Caleb Williams. And so I don't think we're ever going to see Caleb Williams do one in a game. But, like, if he does, like, we know it's in his repertoire. It would be so unbelievably risky and probably stupid to attempt an actual behind-the-back pass in a game. And you would only do it, like, if there's a guy in your face or you're, like, being sacked and you're, like, trying to evade the pressure or something. Like, there's almost never a real scenario where that would actually be a good idea. But he can do it. He's done it at practice, and we saw it on Hard Knocks. So that's where, like, just plant that in the back of your mind, something to keep in mind. Like, okay, Caleb does have the behind-the-back pass in his repertoire here, but we probably won't see it in the regular season game. But wouldn't it be cool? Like, wouldn't it be badass if it's like 2nd and 2 and he's rolling out and he flicks it behind the back to the running back on a check down? Like, again, he shouldn't. It's a bad idea, but it would be so cool to see him do that in a game, or maybe even in a flag football game at the Olympics. Regardless, I'd love to hear what you thought of episode 2 of Hard Knocks. If there were other moments that stood out to you that we didn't talk about here, or if you agree with the way I sort of portrayed things or disagree, by all means, I'd love to hear it from you. Let me know here in the comments on Locked On Bears YouTube channel, or you can tweet us at Locked On Bears, or you can even post in the Locked On Bears Facebook group, or comment on our Instagram or TikTok pages, however you do it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to the podcast, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and that includes your fantasy football team. So if you're looking for your second listen, go check out Locked On Fantasy Football. You get daily insight into the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season, and then, of course, all year long, you're getting waiver wire and trade and lineup updates that can help you be at your best in fantasy. So Go find Locked On Fantasy Football wherever you listen to podcasts or on the YouTube channel. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That means you come back to Locked On Bears tomorrow for another opportunity to bear down.